In today's episode, I'm delighted to bring you Shannon Marie, author of the new book, Crystal Wisdom, and a friend of mine from the Dawn Mountain Sangha, one of the places Shannon deepened her meditation practice. We'll talk about her rebirth from being a corporate worker, good at her job but with so much more to offer the world, to being an author and spiritual guide. Here's one of my favorite quotes from our conversation. You know when you've encountered something that is healthy for your soul. And as a special bonus, if you're listening on April 15th, please check the show notes for a link to download Crystal Wisdom for free today only. Shannon is a certified professional gemologist, YouTube educator, and has created custom gemstone jewelry for more than 15 years. Shannon has studied Reiki, yoga therapy, and has a master's degree in transpersonal psychology. Her crystal wisdom technique combines her expert knowledge of the unique powers of gemstones with reflective practices to help ease life's challenges and ignite personal transformation. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Shannon Marie. Welcome to Letting Grow, the podcast about one of the spiritual journey's most difficult and courageous moments, letting go of who we think we should be so we can grow into who we most deeply are. I'm your host, Claire Villarreal, and I appreciate your joining me today. So thank you so much for being on this show today. I can't wait to hear about all the wonderful things you're doing. And I've been so fortunate as to get to read an advanced copy of Crystal Wisdom, your upcoming new book. And in it, you mentioned that you, even when you were back working a corporate job, you always knew you wanted to be an author. And when I read that, I was like, I have to hear this story. So I'm wondering, would you just maybe introduce us to who you were back in your previous life, so to speak, as a corporate person? Who were you then? But it sounds like you always had this seed for wanting to share. So both of those, who were you and where did that seed to want to share come from?
I spent the great majority of my adulthood telling people that I still wanted to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Yeah, I relate.
Even though I started a corporate job at 25 and remained in that job for 20 years.
Wow.
I was good at the job and it was really rewarding, but it was never fulfilling. But I didn't know what else I really wanted to do. I had strong attractions to the spiritual and separately to gemstones ever since I was young. And I was always spiritually seeking. So when I was going into my cubicle every day to check my emails and make my PowerPoint presentations, I was getting my Reiki certification. I was taking yoga teacher training. I became certified as a Phoenix Rising yoga therapy practitioner. I got my master's degree in transpersonal psychology. All of these very interesting healing techniques, but they didn't really have any cohesion. It was all over the place. So yeah, if this story of my story sounds like it's all over the place, it's because that's exactly how it felt at the time, just this meandering road. And I was kept stable, and I was afforded the opportunity to do all of these certifications because I had a good and stable job. So that was a blessing, and that it allowed me to explore. And even along the way, I knew I wanted to leave the corporate world, and I made several attempts to start businesses that would allow me to break free of that. But, the first one, which was a wellness center and mainly had to do with yoga, it just was not the right timing. So I closed that one down. The second one, which you may remember as Cakes.
Oh yeah, that's
was
memorable.
fun and fulfilling and creative, but it was also stressful because there's a lot of pressure of creating something perfect for people's important moments, and that did not contribute to my mental health. So I resurrected yet another hobby business after I let the Cakes go, and I started up an Etsy store for gemstone jewelry. And now it's not the first time I did that, because I probably in around 2006, I did the same thing on eBay. And so I was working a day job, and at nighttime I was fulfilling my creative urges by making gemstone jewelry and taking Reiki classes. And when I would sell the gemstones on Reiki or on eBay, I would write little descriptions of their healing properties.
Oh, nice.
And that's kind of where that started. But in 2018, I resurrected this jewelry store and started it again. And it gave me this outlet to work with silver and gemstones and to relearn all of these fabulous supportive properties of gemstones. And I started rock tumbling, which is a hobby I had as a child. And working with the physical properties of gemstones then inspired me to get my gemology certification. So I took all of that academic learning, all of those tests, and the practical exam, which was where they would send you like 15 unnumbered but unlabeled gemstones. And I had to successfully identify them using microscopes and refractive index and all of the other tools. And I managed to do that. So I passed my certification. And, again, I mean, this must sound like this crazy fractured path, but I started filming videos on YouTube to share these supportive benefits of gemstones in hopes that it would help direct people to my store. But things finally came together when I decided that I wanted to start writing a book, because I had so much knowledge. Now my brain was so packed with everything that I had learned over years and years and years. And I had started to formulate these themes and ideas and practices, and they were making my brain full. So I started writing a book. And then, COVID hit, and I got distracted, because then I started distance learning with my kids.
Oh man.
But Dent Kitchell published his book, and I bought it and I read it and I loved it. And it was such a phenomenal, wonderful piece that I flipped that book over and I looked at who published his book. Modern Wisdom Press.
And just a shout out to Dent's book. It's called Pursuing Purpose, right?
Pursuing Purpose.
Pursuing Purpose. So good. It's so good. I just wanted to give that little shout out to him.
Absolutely. It's a phenomenal book.
It's about mindfulness. And it's really like if you don't have a teacher and you want to learn, it's kind of a book for that person. It's a great, introduction to a lot of basic ideas, but presented in a way that's really like informed. And Dent has a PhD in, I think, teaching psychology or teaching counseling. So he's really like well-versed in the mind.
But it's really accessible.
Yes, exactly. He
It's
translates all that
it's
well.
super easy to read.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. It's great for direction.
I mean, I was so impressed with it that I sought out his publisher and talked to them, doing something myself.
So exciting. I want to just like pause because I feel like we're about to go into the next chapter of things. But I want to just like reflect back first. It sounds like the way this whole interest in like gemstones and, you know, spiritual and contemplative life, the way it developed, it just sounds so organic and like it's really a lifelong pursuit. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the timeline, like at what point did you decide to actually leave your corporate job?
That was January 2020. It was like,
man. Wow.
2 months before our coronavirus lockdowns. And I did it so that I could focus completely on my gemstone business. And then that got derailed.
Yeah.
By, you know, other commitments, you know, due to schools closing down. So yeah, it's very fluid, organic, and all over the place. But every step contributed to the moment in which it all clicked.
Yeah, that's really what I'm hearing. And, you know, it sounds like almost 15 years of, you know, doing a little bit of this on the side and a little bit of that on the side. And then a couple of years, like you said, you started your gemstone business in 2018 or restarted it again, Phoenix theme there.
Rising, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like 2018, you restarted it, and then 2020 you went full time with it. I'm curious, I'm a fan of yours on YouTube, where your channel is Reiki Gem Wellness. And I'm just wondering, like when 2020 hit, was it good or bad for your business?
It was good because people were at home, seeking one, entertainment, and two, a sense of how they can be well.
Yeah. Stay sane.
So there was online viewing of my YouTube channel. There was online shopping. There were people in need of finding some kind of security in their own health and wellness. So it was actually a good thing. And it was difficult to balance the two. I had to stop rock tumbling. I had to stop filming on that. There were things that I had to cut down to be able to come down to the essence of really what I wanted to do. And it's cut down even further because even the online store no longer exists.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of transitioning from a product provider to information provider. Because there's a lot of capital in my brain. But I started working with Modern Wisdom Press, and they have a program in which multiple authors come together as a cohort, and they work together on writing their first book together.
That sounds so cool.
It is. It's a very structured but ritualistic process in which they really want you to tap into your own authentic self to be able to put your passion out on paper. When we were discussing my book ideas, I had another idea in mind, but they guided me towards something that would start a journey of reading, something that would begin a path through multiple books. And that ended up being crystal wisdom.
Woohoo!
Yay! But I knew then, this is the moment that it clicked, that I had so much in my brain, so much information that I just memorized over time. And it was that organic memorization of just diving into things that you love and being exposed to it for so long that you just remember what the properties of citrine are, or what gemstones will help you organize. All of those things combined with, you know, the knowledge that I gained from yoga and body mind practices of yoga therapy and transpersonal psychology and how we are deeply affected by our spiritual and religious practices and how it contributes to our well-being. Like, every random thing that I had studied for so long finally came together when I was putting together this book, when I was writing it down. And then there are still many books waiting to be birthed, because that is the theme of Modern Wisdom Press. It's this birthing of your passion project in book form. So that is how I transition then to a corporate world, to this space now where I get to work with my own passion and energy and knowledge to be able to develop practices and a new way for people to look at gemstones and crystals and colors and energy, even why our birthstones influence us, and how gemstones and tarot can work together. There's just so much. It's kind of limitless.
Yeah. And it just, I think I can relate, and probably so many people can relate to having these sort of lifelong interests, but they seem scattered all over the place. And then there just comes a moment when you realize how they actually all do fit together. So maybe this is a good time to actually just introduce the practice of crystal wisdom, or, whatever you'd like to share from the book, because I think people might be interested to hear, it's still all about transformation and, using gemstones to assist in that kind of transformation.
And to help us through our life's challenges and transitions and growth and development. And I found that when I was working with gemstones, that I tended to work with those that I needed assistance with. It started to become apparent to me that through my own art practice, that I was helping myself through my own challenges in life. And what crystal wisdom presents is a way to use crystals and gemstones as a mechanism, as a key, as a focus point to help a person uncover the truth within themselves. Because we have the answers that we need to decisions that we need to make, to challenges and stressors in life, to healing from our wounds. Like, how to proceed through those may feel cloudy, but we do know what we need to heal. We absolutely do. And using gemstones can help us really open up to what we already know is good for us.
I think that for me, that's like really the thing I appreciate about your approach, is that the gemstones are more a way of getting in touch with our own wisdom and less like a sort of magic fix all from the outside that's going to just
Exactly.
automatically develop qualities within us.
Exactly. It's not a magic cure-all. And I often get questions about gemstones for money, abundance. There's another one that like getting a job. It's usually about finances, in which people want something pretty quick, but it's not about having a talisman to protect us or provide us with what we need, but to help us excavate and get to the root cause of why there isn't abundance in our lives. Mm-hmm. Are we afraid to hold on to money? Are we afraid to take that next step in our career? You know, there are so many reasons why we could be blocking our own financial prosperity. And then gemstones help you figure out specifically what that is, so that you can resolve that and then proceed to collect what you need in life.
Yeah, I feel like so many people who are spiritually inclined often do have this sort of tension when it comes to money or finances. Mm-hmm. Just even the idea of abundance. It's something I kind of had this like allergy to for a long time. And then I started thinking like, wait a minute, Buddha nature is all about abundance, like our own internal divine. That's what it's all about. You know, it doesn't have to be financial. Like it can be really the sense of like enough, just, you know, I have enough. I am enough. I can meet these challenges.
Absolutely.
So I just appreciate that approach to it.
And to remind people that abundance doesn't just mean money. Like abundance can apply to relationships. It could apply to food or knowledge or a sense of security or anything that we could use more of to help us progress.
Hi friends, want to join the Letting Grow tribe? I'll be starting a bi-weekly newsletter in early 2021 with links to articles, YouTube videos, other podcasts, and basically the best of the rebirth content I've come across lately. Some examples of the kinds of things I want to share with you include a snap judgment story about a bull who seemed to be the reincarnation of another bull, a viral article about the creepy things kids say, but some of them 100% seem to refer to previous lives, and some excerpts from the book I'm writing now about the lessons Tibetan Buddhist teachings on life and death offer to those of us going through transitions. Spoiler alert, that's all of us. Best of all, if you're subscribed, you'll get links to join free live video calls with me and other subscribers every couple of months. So pause this episode now, find the newsletter sign-up link in the show notes, and join your tribe.
So in the book, then, I want people, whether they're just brand new to crystals or whether they've been working with them for years, to have a very practical way to work with them. Because I think one of the biggest concerns that people, my viewers from the YouTube channel, expressed to me was, I have all these gorgeous crystals and they're fantastic, and now what do I do with them? It's common. And I had that same experience too. And it took many, many years of trial and error to figure out like how is the most effective way for me to use them in my life. And so this book takes people through a path of explaining how gemstones can unlock wisdom within us to get us in touch with our truth, how to pick the gemstones that are most useful to you in your life right now, and then how to sit down with them and use them in meditation, in self-exploration, how to use them not only on a daily basis to unearth that wisdom and what we need, but also spontaneous practices, like when you're in the thick of something and you're being actively triggered and you need help right now, how you can pick up the gemstone that you've already identified that you need and sit with it and let it provide you with whatever type of energy that you need to maneuver that immediate situation. Whether you need to release some feelings of anger, whether you need to cultivate some patience, you need to like ground yourself in the present moment, or just breathe and have a moment of stillness to help you take the next step. That is all covered in this book so that people can buy their stones, use them, and see change in their lives.
That's so great. And I'm just wondering if you could just give us like a specific example of something somebody might be working with, and the gemstone they might choose, and just how that relationship between the person doing the practice and the gemstone kind of evolves.
Oh, let's see. What's a good example? Patience.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've always struggled with patience. I like to be in control of my situation. And if I'm not, I can get impatient. And whether that's waiting on something to happen or being patient while somebody else is not reacting in a way that you had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
That's a common situation I think a lot of people encounter. And I use a combination of green aventurine and howlite when I know that I'm feeling impatient. And since this is a really familiar feeling to me, I can identify those physical body sensations that I feel when impatience is coming on, that like knot in my stomach that's rising up because I'm about to start to growl at whatever it is, the long line at the grocery store. And I recognize that this is a feeling that isn't helping me. So I do grab the howlite, the green aventurine, and sit down with them and just release that need to control, to just be, to go with the flow and let the timing work out as it is. I've had a lot of requests from mothers who are homeschooling because some of them are homeschooling intentionally, some are not. And it can be really frustrating to work with your kids in a way that maybe you never intended to, thanks to the pandemic. And, you know, when you're starting the day and they just don't want to start, they're dragging their feet, you know, I tend to get impatient because I want them to be acting in a way that would make this conducive for all of us. Right. But I have to have patience to let them come to that space in their own time. And so I use this combination twofold because howlite is a stone that helps us just release and dissolve intense emotion like anger, stress, frustration, jealousy. It helps us just release it, to let it go. And green aventurine brings us back to the heart space, to remember that we're all working on this together. No matter what we're waiting on, that's another human person on the end of the line. So that is kind of a magical combination to me, to sit and remind me, one, to release that need for control, and two, to come back to some compassion, either from me, because I'm frustrated and sometimes I beat myself up for being impatient, and then for the other person, for the situation. So that's an example of how it works for me.
I love that example.
Apply to every, like, it's not just I'm moving to a new city and this is a major change. It can be, I don't like to stand in line at the grocery store.
Right. The everyday stuff.
Exactly. The everyday stuff needs help. because the everyday stuff adds up to a really long day.
Yeah, especially right now when the everyday stuff for a lot of people, there's just more layers of it.
I mean, going to I bring up the grocery store, maybe because it's a stress trigger for me too, because one, not only do I not like to do it, and I have, my own stress issues being in crowds of people, but also like now you've got to be careful about being around people and wear your mask and be safe. And every time you go out, you're potentially exposing yourself to infection. I should complete that sentence.
Right. Yeah. The one type of exposure you have control over, the other type, not so much.
Yeah. So just even a simple trip to a grocery store can be stress inducing.
I appreciate that example because it gives us like a concrete way of thinking about, that these gemstones, I believe in transpersonal properties and things that affect us and are real, but they're not physical. And maybe some of that is going on. And maybe it's just a reminder, and it's a beautiful object, and it helps you, like you're saying, bring you back to your heart space in the middle of a really stressful situation. So I just have to plug your book here. It's a fantastic book. If you've ever wondered about using gemstones as a practice and you don't want a flaky book about it, you should totally go grab Crystal Wisdom. It publishes on April 15th. So it's about to be available. And so thank you for just giving us a little sample of like what's actually in there and what sounds like it's been a practice you've done for a long time now.
It is. Although I didn't realize I was doing it. And it took some concerted effort when I was thinking about how would I sit down with somebody and tell them how I got the most out of gemstones to actually define the practice. Writing the book was such an amazing experience, defining my own wisdom practices and my own crystal practices that had just been running in the background naturally for me. I would just do them, but having this time to sit down and think deeply about it, define it, describe it, was, I don't know if cathartic is the right word, but it just took my own personal practice to a whole new level and intentionality. And I really appreciate now having some very specific guidance to give people when they ask me questions.
I guess this is a good segue into the final part of what I'm curious about, which is you've gone through this whole process of writing and editing, and your book is about to come out. Who are you now that you've gone through all these transitions? Like, how are you different from who you were when you were working a corporate job and all this stuff was there, but under the surface?
Yeah. Who am I now?
Yeah.
That's a big question.
Yeah. Another Phoenix question.
Yeah. I want to say that like I'm an information provider, that I'm hoping to be a guide, somebody who's just sweeping that path for people to help them move forward in life and to find easier ways to do that. Yeah, to make that path easier to tread so they're not tripping over sticks and branches or getting lost in the weeds, that they have a nice, clear, defined path in which to follow. And there are lots of ways in which to do that. Crystal wisdom is one, and it seems to be my specialty now. So, being a crystal guide for people, I guess that's who I am now. And I really resonate deeply with being an author. And it was something on my bucket list for a long time. And it was something that I had acknowledged and stated out loud that I wanted to write a book for a long time, but I didn't know what it was that I wanted. And imposter syndrome stopped me from starting it many, many times. But I loved the experience of writing a book. It's just as much for me, that process, as it is for the people that are reading the book, because there's just something fulfilling about putting together information in a way that hopefully gets people to look at something from a different lens, helps them have an easier way to deal with things in life.
Yeah.
And then having it all come together then in one piece of work when you're done. Like it's a really satisfying feeling. So I will continue to do it.
That is awesome. It just sounds amazing to have gone through so many changes, and it sounds like a couple of different leaps of faith, and to have the universe support you when you need to land.
Yes, it did. Things fell into place. As discouraging as it felt along that very, very, very long road, I just kept exploring. And, finally I reached a space when like all of those different paths converged into one point. And there it felt like, the universe had a little welcome mat for me that I could rest my feet on.
Yeah. A little solid ground when everything else is changing. So my last question is, what advice do you have now for yourself when you were contemplating taking the leap and starting your own business, going out on that path, or anyone else who's considering, they're on this side of the chasm and they're thinking like, should I jump?
I mean, for me, it became very clear and obvious that my mental health was not going to survive if I stayed at that job. I mean, really, it was so extremely stressful and caused so much suffering that I knew I had to leave. And my husband and I, we spent a year planning and maneuvering and making this happen. But at some point, you have to know when your health is suffering because you're on a path that is not good for you. You have to be willing to acknowledge to yourself that something needs to change, and then really just take the step, because even if that step isn't the right step, it's taking you away from something that is not healthy. But in many other people's cases, it's not quite so obvious. It's a pervasive dissatisfaction or a sense that you're just not at home. And, that's when I encourage people to explore, to do what I did, to try those things that you love, even if it's a lot of them, even if they seem very different from each other, to keep exploring and to keep trying until one day, hopefully, that something clicks. And when it does, don't be afraid to take the leap, because I think and the book is part of that. When you have encountered something that is really healthy for your soul, and I then embrace it.
Yeah. When you've encountered something that's really healthy for your soul. That's so true. There's just a certain hum or a buzz or a something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, speaking from my own experience, there have been plenty of times when I've felt that, but I felt afraid to follow it. And there have been plenty of other times when I felt it and did follow it. And it's just really nice to hear that sort of reflected from someone else, that there's a lot of value to learning to listen to your own intuition and your own wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Don't be discouraged if you feel like you're meandering.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be discouraged by what feels like you tried something that didn't work, because you tried something. Because it's all leading you to that moment, to that discovery. As long as you're following like your inner wisdom in your heart, and you're following those signs, it'll lead you to that place.
Yeah, it sounds like your life journey has been a real validation of that principle.
But
But
it's only in hindsight
yes,
that is apparent.
Yes, such a good point. Such a good point.
Yeah.
I feel like often, when people tell stories of their own transformation or someone else's transformation, especially after a setback or something, there's this way in which like you already know the ending, so the whole story feels a little bit inevitable, and it doesn't feel that way living it.
No, it doesn't. When you're in the thick of it, it feels like floating on a rapid river, know?
Yeah.
But, like I said, in hindsight, I can see where everything had a purpose and a meaning, and it came together as it should. But to not be discouraged when you don't feel that. It's okay.
That's such a good advice. And I feel like this is a good place to end and just say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, your crystal wisdom. And I'll have links in the show notes so people can find that book. But thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much for reading my book and for inviting me to talk about it and having such great questions that let me think about it and delve into it all over again.
Thanks for coming along for today's exploration of the process of letting grow. If you found this episode helpful, please share it. And subscribe now so you're always in the loop. For links to more content related to today's episode, please see the show notes. See you again next week.